Welcome along then, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to episode 7 of the Formula E-Zone podcast. Coming up today is our 2019 Paris E-Prix race review. My name is Toby. I'm a journalist for German Formula E page eFormel.de. Today filling in for Dan. We finally got rid of him on this show. But he'll be back for future episodes, I promise. Joining me though, as usual, is the one and only editor-in-chief of Formula E-Zone. It's Jack Jordmainer. We've got plenty to talk about in this one. It's been a hectic race, absolute madness once again in Formula E, with a rain and hail affected race for the first time in the championship's history nonetheless. First of all though, hello Jack. How are you doing?
I am good, my friend. It's a pleasure to have you. It's a shame Dan is not here, but me and Tobias, we were close to having someone on, but we decided, you know what, Dan's not here, so we'll hold the fort for him while he's away. Okay, so it'll just be me and Tobias, holding the flag for the Formula E-Zone podcast, waving it as hard as we can and making it as the best as we can. So let's hope for a good one.
Dan, you are missed. Jack, you've been to Paris. How has your trip been to Paris?
Oh, the trip was lovely. Wet again. Like where we were in Rome, we got wet again in Rome. But this time actually, it rained as well. As people know, it eventually did rain in the race, but we'll get onto that for the first time. But got extremely wet in the pit lane, trying to find some interviews. The rain, it just came down, and I was like, man, my jacket was not waterproof. Well, it's waterproof to an extent. Yeah, which I don't understand. Like, how can a coat not be waterproof? But after so much heavy rain, the rain was actually seeping through my coat and my shoulders were drenched. And I was like, this is the worst coat in the history of coats. But apart from that, it was okay. It was good. It was a lovely time. Good catching up with the drivers. And yeah, lots to talk about.
Lots to talk about, especially in this podcast. Shall we get just straight into the action then?
Yeah.
Okay. So where do we start? Qualifying, obviously. I mean, not much happened in practice, really. I mean, we had rain,
a few spins.
as you said. A few spins, especially in free practice 1. We had a lot of spins. People being caught out by, the poor grip, the white lines. We'll get onto that a bit later on in the race review as well. But apart from rain and FP1, couple of crashes, couple of spins, not really anything too interesting to talk about.
It was a bad start for Envision Virgin Racing. Like, you had both Frijns and Sam Bird in the wall. Like, absolutely. It was a terrible start. And then Sam Bird missed the whole of practice 2. So he was going into qualifying without actually doing a 250 kilowatt lap around the Paris track. So Virgin Racing and Frijns didn't do many laps either in FP2 because they were basically just making sure from the damage that they fixed in FP1. So they were basically just making sure that the car was running okay. And Sam didn't get out at all. So basically both drivers, Frijns did get a 250 kilowatt lap in, but it wasn't representative or quick in any regard. But out of all the teams that really struggled during practice, it was definitely Virgin Racing.
That said though, in the final order in qualifying, we had a Virgin car in the top 5. Robin Frijns qualified in P4 out of all cars, so that's a pretty respectable result. But as you said, with Sam Bird not having the experience of a 250 lap in the dry in FP2, that meant he had to start right from the back. Not the back off the back markers, but
started
he
13th. He did qualify 15th, but then with some juicy post-qualifying penalties, he started 13th, which was respectable for Bird because when you think about it, you haven't done a 250 kilowatt lap. Then you stick it 13th. You're in a position. Yes, you're not in the point scoring positions, but he had a chance to then work his way through the field. And try and actually score points in the race. So he gave himself an opportunity.
Now, what's all this penalty stuff been about after qualifying? You said people moved up 2 spots. Why did they?
Well, Mahindra Racing. Poor old Mahindra Racing. So what had happened, I'm going to talk about Jerome D'Ambrosio first before I get into it, because Jerome D'Ambrosio was in Group 1 in qualifying, and he made it out of Group 1 and actually made it into Superpole, which I think is the first time that we've seen that. I know, it was crazy. It was a really good lap from D'Ambrosio, because you've got the others. You've got Mitch Evans, who backed the qualifying system on the Friday in the press conference, saying that it was probably the best qualifying system in Formula E. And then he starts P20, and I spoke to Evans after the race, and I was like, well, do you still think it's a good qualifying system? You're in Group 1 for the second time, and, you back the qualifying system. You were fastest. Mitch Evans was fastest in practice too. Then he qualifies P20. Now, if you're fastest in a practice session, you'll be aiming for pole position, but you end up starting P20. So, but he still, to be fair to Mitch, he backed the qualifying system, but back to Mahindra. So you had Jerome D'Ambrosio, who made it into Superpole, and also Pascal Wehrlein in the group qualifying session finished second, but then into Superpole, Wehrlein put in a stunning lap. It was an amazing lap. Literally, he nailed the circuit and put it on pole. But a couple of hours later, the dreaded, and I've got a really bad anecdote, which is like, it's not great, but I'll say it in 2 seconds. But so Wehrlein was on pole, but a tyre pressure infringement from both drivers. They were under the minimum tyre pressure by quite a way, forced them both to get disqualified. Now, I was in the pit lane getting drenched actually the rain had just stopped, but I was feeling my shoulders were wet. I was, and there's Dilbag Gill. And I said I was looking at the skies, and I wanted to find out. I was in the pit lane trying to find out what teams' weather radars were suggesting for the race, because it was literally intermittent rain showers all day. We had a massive downpour in the I-Pace race as well, which was about 2:00. We had rain in the morning, which made FP1 wet, and then we got a little bit of rain before the race. Then it dried up, and then it rained in the race. Okay, but Dilbag Gill was there, and I put my hand out. I said, "Congratulations, Dilbag," and he went, "What for?" And I went, there was that momentary pause that I did there, and then I was like, "You're on pole, right?" He's like, "No, Jack, we've just been disqualified," and he sort of told me the reasons, and then that was quickly the end of the conversation. I did ask him about the rain. He looked at the rain. He said, "Yeah, he was expecting a bit more of it," but so I got his weather radar that they were expecting rain, but that conversation, Dilbag's normally such a nice guy to talk to, but that conversation quickly ended, let me tell you. That, and I solemnly made my way back to the media centre to realise, okay, I've got a story to write, and while trying to get stories, another story has emerged, which you don't expect, so another crazy world of Formula E. So that meant the Mahindra drivers had to start from the back, so a challenging one for them.
That's right, P21 and P22. I mean, shall we just briefly talk about why teams opt for lower tyre pressures? Because
go for it.
That really does give an advantage, especially on tight, twisty street circuits. So generally in fast corners, less tyre pressure obviously means that the tyres deform more, and in corners they provide you with more grip, which obviously is great on a hot qualifying lap. Of course, on a straight, that means more rolling resistance, and that means more energy consumption and less top speed and all of that. But you have a clear advantage with less tyre pressure in the corners, and that's why teams always opt for low tyre pressures in motorsports. But
there's a minimum as well.
There is, yeah. And teams generally underfill their tyres in terms of air, and then drivers have to be really aggressive on their in-lap, and that's what Mahindra was building upon. They put less air into the tyres of both their drivers so that they have an advantage with more grip on their qualifying run, and then the drivers were supposed to be aggressive on their in-lap to heat up the tyres, and especially heat up the air in the tyres. And as we all know, hot air expands. That's why hot air balloons float and fly, and the tyre pressure then increases. So that's the general idea of having low tyre pressures. Get the drivers out on track, have them do their lap with low tyre pressures and more grip, and then a really aggressive in-lap, and arrive at the pits with high tyre pressures when they're measured, and that's just the general idea.
Yeah, they're always trying to get that sort of advantage by running as low as possible and then trying to heat up so there's actually more air in the tyre after they've done their lap when it's measured. But there's a reason. So there's a minimum, of course, and mainly that minimum is just to ensure that tyre doesn't deform. So obviously Michelin will decide what the minimum tyre pressure should be for that track. So that means every team should adhere to those tyre pressure limits. And if you're under it, then Michelin will say there's a higher chance of that tyre prematurely like deforming, having a higher wear rate, overheating, tread separation, which can cause, and obviously we're using sort of very road-like tyres, so that can cause quite a big accident. So it's there for safety, for the main reason. That's why Michelin put those minimum tyre pressures there. But, you know, I think every Formula E team are trying to break the rules or bend the rules to try and see how much they could get away with, because it is a big advantage if you get it right.
Absolutely, yeah. And, I mean, Mahindra was caught out in Paris, and I saw a lot of people complaining about it. It's always Formula E where the pro-sitter is disqualified after qualifying, and I get the point of criticism, I get it, but in the end of the day, it's just the rules, and teams have to adhere to what Michelin is saying.
Yeah, and it was interesting. I was in the media centre and I was talking to a journalist friend of mine, and we were discussing, like, I was saying the same thing as those fans who were complaining, it's always Formula E, and it's like, because you know it's going to come. You know you're going to get those social media tweets about, Formula E, post-race penalties, you never see this in Formula 1. And then the journalist I was sitting next to was like, well, that's because it's a one-day format.
Exactly.
Because everything's rushed and it's in a one-day format. The chances of making a mistake like that is higher than if you're doing it in practice on Friday, qualifying Saturday, race Sunday, or practice Saturday or race Sunday and qualifying Sunday. So you've got more time to sort of get to grips with what to expect from the day. But because we do everything in one day and everything's so compact, I think sometimes that catches out teams, and sometimes a mistake, and just from the stresses of the day, especially if there's been an accident. Sometimes you've seen, I think like something's gone wrong in practice and they've put something wrong on the car, they've done something wrong by mistake to get the car ready for the next session, therefore the car gets penalised through something like that, which I think we've seen on quite a few occasions. So yeah, people are right to say yes, it is Formula E, and it's always happening. And to be fair, it hasn't happened for a while, like where the pole sitter has been relegated from
Santiago.
It's been a few races,
2 months.
So which has been good for Formula E. But yeah, we don't want it every race. I think it's just unfortunate. But I suppose if you're going to have those low tyre pressures, then you're going to get that significant advantage. So it made sense, really. Sadly, I know Pascal put in a brilliant lap, but it sort of made sense why he was on pole, and it could also make sense of why Jerome D'Ambrosio got out of Group 1 and got into Super Pole. It's sort of, sadly, it puts the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together that we thought, wow, that was stunning, and then all of a sudden it sort of comes out and goes, that makes sense now, in a sense. It was a shame for Mahindra Racing.
Do you know what I started to think about as a journalist, and especially in the fast-living and fast-moving world of motorsport and generally sports journalism? I started to think about preparing like dummy articles about the pole sitter being disqualified. And just having
people do that,
and just having variables, and then fill in the name. I mean, have the heading X has been disqualified from qualifying, or Y is not now in pole position, and then just fill in the variables. That's what it's come this far that I've started to think about doing that. It's a general.
It's a common practice.
Yeah.
In newspapers, I think there was once upon a time, newspapers would re-release two different articles, completely different articles. So say if in football, for example, in a late game, for example, in the evening, and the newspaper's got to go to publish, they will have a X team 1 and Y team 1, and then ready, and then they just fill in the bits of what's happened in the game, and it's sent straight to publish. So it has been quite a common practice. I have seen it before, or talked about it before. I haven't actually seen it, but I've heard people actually try and be in that situation where they need to get something out or prepare something just in case X happens.
Yeah.
So it does happen.
I've heard about newspapers.
It's funny that you're thinking that way now, because it's true. It's like we were talking about when we get to the race, and we're talking about after the race, and obviously it was a chaotic race, and we were like, do we wait? Is this race the final result? Like, we were waiting tender hooks for some post-race penalties to be dished out. Thankfully, there wasn't any severe that impacted the result of the race, but there were some post-race penalties given out, but didn't impact the result, which was quite good. But we were expecting post-race penalties to impact the result, so we were like, well, we'll say Frijns has won, or, you know, who's won, but we'll sort of like hold back, make sure we're here to hear the news from the FIA. So, yeah, even I don't think you're the only journalist thinking that way.
I've heard about newspapers even planning obituaries for, like, people passing away. Oh, that's true.
That's been done.
Yeah.
When I was in uni, a journalist had died. I think it was an old journalist. She had died from old age, but she had written an obituary about someone who then died after she had died, and obviously the article went out. It was published with her name, but so she technically wrote that article from the grave, but she hadn't.
Oh, that's bad.
It had been planned from so long, this person's obituary, and then but the person died after the reporter died.
Ooh.
So therefore, so that again is common practice, that it's been done.
But I mean,
you get crazy stories like that.
Credit where it's due. I mean, it's her intellectual property, isn't it?
Yeah.
So why would you change the name? Oh God, that's bad. Oh God, Jesus.
Yeah, but it's just that they just plan it. It's mind-boggling to think of. I know it's really not Formula E based right now, but at the same time, it's still interesting, right?
Absolutely.
Just to think about it. But in terms of Formula E, that's how we're thinking. We're just thinking like you need something ready just in case that happens, because there's such a high likelihood of that happening that we might as well prepare for that inevitability.
We should open up a new podcast about sports journalism and talk about these sorts of things on that one. Shall we just move back to Formula E maybe then? And keep the idea of the sports journalism podcast in mind for another day. Because after we still haven't talked about the final starting order. We've talked about Mahindra getting penalised and starting from P21 and P22, but we had a new pole sitter, and this man's name was Oliver Rowland. All of a sudden, alongside him, his teammate Sebastian Buemi. Nissan locking out the front row, which
was the first front row lockout for a team since Neo in Hong Kong in season 3, when Nelson Piquet Jr. was on pole alongside Oliver Turvey. So it's been a long time, 2 seasons or a season and a bit between a front row lockout. So that was a while since we saw one of those.
Has it been Nelson's last pole position as well?
More than likely, because he didn't get a pole position for Nelson, and that was the only pole. That was the first race for Neo, and it went backwards. Like, we all thought, wow, Neo could win this championship after season 1. Front row lockout. Never seen that before in 2 seasons of Formula E. And then they went completely south in season 3. So and Jaguar haven't got pole. Well, Piquet definitely hasn't got a pole under.
That's right, yeah.
Under Jaguar when he was there, so that would have been his last pole position in season 3 Hong Kong.
Probably, yeah. So
I think that was his first pole position as well. But anyway, because I don't think he got a pole position in his championship winning year. Oof. Don't think he did. Oof. But anyway, moving on. Yeah. Enough Nelson Piquet Jr. chatting.
He's not a Formula E driver anymore.
Yeah, he's not in it anymore. Like, what's going on? Formula E's own podcast has turned into a historic Formula E and random anecdotes from sports journalism articles. It's been fun though, but it's interesting. But at the same time, let's get into the race.
Yes, and we had another rain shower before the race, as you said earlier. And that meant we had to start behind the safety car. And everyone, the drivers learned about it 3 minutes in advance. We learned about it 3 minutes before the race started. The reason for the safety car start is that the sun dried up the left-hand side of the start straight. It's not really
it was
the
undercover
main
by
straight,
trees.
Yeah. and the right-hand side was covered by trees. And so the track was wet on the right-hand side and dry on the left-hand side. And the race director, that's the first time I've heard about this reasoning. The race director said it's unfair. And, I mean, I've never heard about a race director arguing. Usually race directors say that's not safe. But now the race director
that he said it was
that's
unfair,
not fair for people starting on the right-hand side.
It made sense because it was unfair.
Absolutely,
like, you couldn't have everyone on that side of the grid where it was wet is going to get hampered. They're going to get such a worse start, and you're going to see everyone on the dry side just steam past them. And you're just like, well, that's a random start, isn't it? And you're just like, well, what's the point in qualifying P? I think second would have started on the wet side. So you qualify P2, and then you get into the first corner, and you're in 6th place because third, 5th, and 8th have gone past you because it was dry, and you're too busy slipping and sliding till you get to the drive section. So I think it was the right call to start behind the safety car in that situation, because we had the rain shower and the track hadn't fully dried. One was in the sun, one wasn't in the sun, so obviously the one in the sun is going to dry first. It was common logic, and it was good to see some common logic actually used in Formula E. I'm not saying it's not really used common logic, but it can be questionable from time to time. But I think there was some good common sense used, and I think it was good. It was a shame we didn't have that normal start, but
it was a bit of an anticlimax.
But I think right decision was made. I was surprised actually that the time hadn't started. I don't know if the time for the race hadn't started until the safety car peered in, and I thought, but they're obviously, even though they're under safety car conditions, they're still using energy. Like, energy is going down.
That was my thought as well. Yeah.
So I was like, why haven't they started once they'd gone past where they were supposed to start? I was surprised that the time didn't start. It didn't start. They basically did an extra lap of that race under safety car conditions. Obviously, yes, you could say energy consumption reduced by 50%, but that's still energy, something that they'd have to then regain in a 45-minute race than they would have started with. So obviously that would have caused for a little bit more energy management in the race.
And usually this is what happens behind with the safety car start.
Yeah.
But think about other motorsport series. As soon as the safety car leaves the grid, lap 1 is on without a formation.
In an aborted start. Like, basically it was something similar that we had. We basically had an aborted start due to the track grid not being safe. So that counts towards a lap. So like in Formula 1, like if it was Albert Park, it becomes from a 58 lap race, it becomes a 57 lap race because they're using fuel on that lap to round the safety car. So it's unfair to do a 58 lap race once you've done an aborted start. It's been like that in Formula 1 for years. So I just found it really interesting that the time actually hadn't started.
Do you know what I would have liked to have seen? An IndyCar start. It's a bit difficult to explain to the drivers within 3 minutes, but a 2x2 start, maybe just pop in the full course yellow limiter, and then have the race director count
and then
down,
go green,
full course
green.
yellow ending. Like ELMS do these kinds of starts, and IndyCar do these kinds of starts. DTM does these, and I mean, have the drivers go 2x2 at 50 kilometers an hour, and then the race director counts down, or just the Le Mans start, and then the start lights switch to green, and off we go.
I think it would have been difficult though. I think that would be a nice addition in maybe after a safety car restart to do it like that. But I think because obviously track was wet, so obviously someone's still going to probably be on the wetter side on that 2x2. So
that is true.
If you think of it that way, but it does sound cool when you watch other racing series and they line 2x2. Something, even though something you're not expecting a crash to happen or something dramatic to happen, but it builds up that tension that something's about to just go.
Yeah, and probably. Yeah, the idea of having a race start, a 2x2 race start, probably isn't the best idea. But for safety car restarts, how about having 2x2 IndyCar safety car restarts for season 6?
Oh, we're living the dream here. As we said in the last podcast, Formula E, pay us. We're here. We've got the ideas. We've got the brain. We can make this series it's already incredible. We can make it just mind blowing. Imagine. But so let's just talk about the race, because obviously we got underway on the safety car. Safety car pulled in after one lap, and then it wasn't really long, Tobias, until we saw our first incident. And I bet you didn't expect Oliver Rowland, who was obviously pole leading man, had the chance to control the race. Oliver Rowland, who's not put a foot wrong in this championship, puts the foot wrong at, I think it was, he locked up at T10, so turn 10. It was the tight right-hander where they peer in just before they come back round towards the pit exit. It's a really tough, tight, and he just locked up and went straight into the wall, and I'm sure you weren't expecting it.
I wasn't, no. It was a weird incident, wasn't it? It reminded me of Sebastian Buemi losing the lead in Santiago.
Yeah.
With the twin MGU setup playing a role there. Might have something to do with technical stuff going on in the rear of his car.
Yeah.
Might have something to do with a driver error. I don't know, but it's been a weird incident, but in hindsight, we can't change anything.
Yeah.
Thing is, Ollie lost the lead and rejoined the race technically last.
Yeah.
Not too much damage to his car, but
he lost his front wing, I think.
Did he lose all of it?
Yeah.
I think he had an incident later on where he also damaged his front
because they changed his front wing after that, and then he got into another incident, and it was like, you just like, you know what, I'm not coming back in. I'm just going to drive the rest of the race without this front wing and see what happens. But yeah, it wasn't the most spectacular race for Roland. I was speaking to another German journalist, actually in the race, and they was talking, because obviously there's a lot of controversial things going on about the Nissan Edam's powertrain with the twin motor setup, and we're now in round 8, and according to him, he told me that teams are ready to protest Nissan's twin motor system, and but I made the argument that these cars have already been homologated, they've already been cleared by the FIA, so they should be legal. In a sense, like, you can't start protesting a team because they're doing something like it's been homologated by the FIA. So they've said it's okay. But apparently, if they would have won in Paris, I don't know what teams, but there would have been a few teams that would have tried to protest the race result, stating that because of Nissan's twin power unit, they would have protested it and seen what would have happened. Which is really interesting, because I feel like it's just strange that they're waiting for them to win to do the thing. And you can't protest them if they win in New York. You can't protest them at the last race of the season. That's just ridiculous. That's what I was trying to make. It's like, it's too long. They should have, if they wanted to protest their powertrain, they should have protested it ages ago. Like, you can't just wait for them to win. If they win the last race of the season and you protest it, I think that's the most ridiculous thing you could possibly do.
I agree. Yeah. I love these political stories in motorsports.
Yeah. It makes no sense.
The Nissan twin MGU is such a political story, or it's developed into such a political story. It started out as a technical goodie, really.
Yeah.
Not much more than a nice little tech story. All manufacturers protesting and lobbying against the Nissan powertrain. And they're lobbying for ruling it out for season 7, because obviously development for next year has already begun. And
yeah, so they're all going to develop it for season 6, and then they're all going to ban it. It's just hilarious, isn't it, when you think about it? Like, okay, we've seen what you've done there, Nissan. We've seen it. Okay, we don't like it. We're going to do it for one season because we can see the advantage you're getting from it. Because they are. Because all drivers, when you speak to drivers and they're behind a Nissan car, they can't keep up with it coming out of a corner.
Pull away.
They can't keep up with it coming out of a corner. They just say it just bolts. And it's just gone. And that advantage of trying to stay with them and trying to overtake them is so difficult. But it's amazing that, okay, we're going to run that twin motor system or something similar to give us that boost. But then obviously season 7 we're going to say, we shouldn't do that. It's just then a waste of investment, if that makes sense. But again, it's like they've waited too long to protest. Like, we're going into 5 races of the season left. Yeah, 4 locations and 5 races, because New York is a double header. So it's too late. Like, if you protest it, if they even if they win in Monaco, like, it's still for me too late to protest their powertrain. Like, you should have done it much earlier in the season, like Marrakesh time or Santiago, not towards the back end of the season.
Thing is, the story only really surfaced after Santiago.
I think it was after Sanya it became big. That more teams are starting to lobbying against it. Maybe early rumours of the tech stuff sort of came out by Santiago, but Sanya was apparently when the story became big.
We'll keep that in mind for the next couple of races, and we'll always keep an eye open for Nissan's powertrain. I don't think other teams are going to follow suit for next year, because as well as Nissan, they've already started developing their Season 6 powertrain. And I'm not really sure if...
Well, they've got the option
quote-unquote
they've got the option
small
to. They
manufacturers.
wanted to run something similar. Like, if they're not going to ban it, if they're going to ban it for Season 7, then they've got the option to run it in Season 6. Okay, but it's interesting. But I think what we should do is we should move along. Roland then fell down to the back, and then Sebastian Buemi took the lead of the race. And Robin Frijns was promoted to second from the incident. And Frijns looked super quick behind Buemi, you have to admit. And Frijns knew this, and he went into attack mode first. And even under attack mode now, Paris is an extremely difficult track to get past. But he, on the first lap with attack mode, Frijns got close but couldn't really get past. But then coming into turn 9, just before the activation zone, Buemi he went wide. And Frijns, and now for me, you've gone into attack mode. So for me, I think for Robin, I feel like he should have been a bit more careful here, because he stuck his nose in down the inside of turn 9 where Buemi had left a gap. But obviously, Frijns is in attack mode. Buemi wants to take attack mode. So by Frijns putting his front wing in there, in the corner essentially, and Buemi always going to cut across, there was always going to be contact there, in my opinion. Always, and that's what happened. Buemi, it wasn't a massive amount of contact, it was just like a brush, but it was enough to damage Robin Frijns' front wing. But crucially, it was also enough to give Sebastian Buemi a slow puncture. Okay, which then caused Buemi to slow down and eventually get passed by Frijns. And Buemi had to go into pits to change the tyre. Now, my version, I just sort of said that there, Tobias. My version is that I felt like, I'm not saying Frijns is at fault, because Buemi didn't have to take attack mode, but I'm just thinking maybe Frijns should have been thinking that Buemi was going to take attack mode. How did you see the situation?
I agree. Frijns has been really lucky not to be penalised in that kind of situation. Of course, it's right at the border between a racing incident and Robin, you shouldn't have had your car in this kind of position. It's a tough call, and it's not been the cleanest of situations. That's sure for certain. But
for me, like, I spoke to Robin after the race. And he said, well, for him, obviously not for me, but for him, it was a poor place to put the attack mode, because everyone's switching to the outside. So if you are trying to go and move and you want to go attack mode, you have to prepare for them to cut in, which Frijns sort of admitted that he wasn't really prepared for Buemi, or didn't think that he would cut across. Because he made that mistake and because he put the front wing in, I think Frijns was hoping he'd seen him and had to continue for another lap without attack mode. Because Buemi did make the mistake. Like, in a normal situation, in a normal racing without any attack mode, I don't think there would have been a collision. They wouldn't have touched. Because Buemi would have driven straight, Frijns would have sort of turned in more sharply, but would have been on sort of the inside, maybe alongside his wheel. I don't think they would have touched. I think they only touch because Buemi's going into that attack mode and sort of cuts across that front wing, but because Frijns put it there, and he sort of maybe as racing drivers say, he gave Buemi the choice to either hit him to go into attack mode or not take attack mode. For me, it's definitely, I wouldn't say it's Frijns' fault. I think maybe Frijns could have been a bit more aware of the situation and maybe think, he's going to go into attack mode because I'm in attack mode. Like, they're going to be on the radio telling him to cover what I've just done. Like, it's just common sense. But I suppose in the heat of the battle, when you're driving the car, you see a mistake, you stick your nose in, right? So I don't blame Frijns.
That's right, yeah. I don't blame as well, yeah. And the interesting thing is that they moved the attack zone just days before the race. It was supposed to be a little more down the straight, 30 meters more down the straight.
Yeah.
And that would have changed the entire setup of that particular corner. Because had it been the attack zone layout as it was announced a couple of weeks in advance to the race, drivers would have taken a normal line through turn 10 and then moved over to the right hand side, technically lose no time whatsoever, and only have the advantage of the extra 25 kilowatts.
Yeah.
And well, they moved it, so drivers had to take another line through that corner, and that led to that situation. Do you know what also is interesting? The story about the slow puncture.
Yes.
Do you know what particular part of the tire Robin ruptured with his nose cone? He made contact with the right rear wheel, obviously, and he hit Buemi at the exact place where the valve was for the air to come in.
Oh, wow.
There we go again. Yeah. And he damaged the valve stem and bent it, and that meant that the air slowly crept out of the tire, and that led to Buemi not retiring, but having to change his tires 3 laps afterwards.
It's
so
interesting.
What are the chances
you could say because Sam Bird obviously punctured Lotterer's tire in where was it? Hong Kong. And Sam got a penalty for it post race because obviously Lotterer was in the lead. Obviously, it was a different sort of move. It's hard to compare, apples and oranges, you could say, because it was a slightly different move, but it was the same result. And yes, it was a different move, but there was the same outcome. Both drivers got a puncture. And Sam was penalised in that race, but Robin wasn't. So you could say there was, considering the outcome, there was a different. It could have been the same penalty, but I still believe Frijns didn't deserve a penalty. But it was, it was close. It was we're debating it now, close, so it's debatable.
Yeah, I think it's been the right decision not to penalise him.
Yeah, I agree. But, maybe one or two people, maybe some cynics out there might say, hey, Sam got a penalty, so why hasn't Frijns?
And you know what all of that also meant? That we had a third leader of the E-Prix.
Yeah.
We had Roland, he bottled it on lap 1. Buemi had to pit with the slow puncture. Also was caught for overspeeding in the pit lane and had to do another drive-through penalty for that, by the way. And then Robin Frijns took the lead. And
it's a third different lead change. It was pretty good, but I suppose it wasn't due to normal overtaking, so it was a bit like that stat when Roland crashed. There's been 21 overtakes in this E-Prix. I was like, yeah, because Roland's gone from first to last, so technically there's been none.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought the same, yeah. Yeah, and all of that happened before we even had the first drop of rain, and that was the biggest talking point of the race. We didn't even talk about the weather. I mean, we technically talked about the weather, but not about the weather in the context of the race.
Of the race. First time in 5 seasons. It's taken us 5 seasons. We've been close. You could say we've had some races with rain or damp starts, but there's the rain, the heavens have not opened during a Formula E race. Or the heavens haven't been raining at the start of a Formula E race. So to me, those tracks that started damp weren't really wet Formula E races because it wasn't raining. It had already rained. It was just drying. We were starting on a damp circuit. We finally got a wet circuit, and boy, did it create some chaos.
Oh, absolutely. I think... Did you walk through Parc Fermé after the race?
I didn't walk through Parc Fermé after the race, but I can imagine there was a lot.
Okay.
Because I didn't leave the media centre till 8 o'clock at night, because we were all waiting to see if anything was happening. And the final classification was it was about 8 o'clock at night when it was confirmed, and it was just confirmed the 3 post-race penalties that would be in effect for Monaco, not the race itself. But we were all waiting. So by the time it was 8 o'clock, I was straight out there to the hotel, like to sleep. So I didn't go to the post. But I reckon by that time, 8 o'clock at night, cars would have already been packed away and start worked on. To be fair, and back in the pits at that time.
That is true. Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting because we had quite a few. Well, we had the first, obviously, the rain came and it was heavy. Like, it was proper heavy. Like, we've seen rain in Formula E. We've seen rain in testing. Back in Donington, we saw rain. We've seen rain
in Valencia.
I think, Valencia had a bit of rain. We had Hong Kong shakedown sessions. We've had practice sessions that were wet.
New York shakedown. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
that
Remember
was
that?
wet.
Season 3.
But this was the first time when the heavens did open. It was, if you were to say, it wasn't intermediate running, it was full wet weather running. So
it was monsoon.
It was a real test for the all-weather tyres, and but there was the problem that occurred, which is not race direction's fault at all. I think they threw the forced course yellow for the rain because it was raining, but. I was in that situation. It was like, well, you either red flag it and wait for it to pass, or you put the safety car out, or you stop the race. You don't just run under a full course yellow, because that's like, it's, pick one. You either stop the race because it's unsafe.
How many full course yellows did we see in the end? 3 or 4 full course yellows?
I think there was one for the rain, 3.
3. Yeah. I thought so too, yeah. So we had 3 full course yellows in the course of just the second half of the race, and 1 safety car period.
And 1 safety car period.
A brief one, but 1 safety car.
That's how chaotic it got with the rain. But it's not, I wouldn't say that's just, I think it's just the nature of street tracks, the nature of, it's now easier to make a mistake. Like, it looked comical when I was watching it. I was like, oh, not another spin, oh, not another crash. Yeah.
Not another one,
yeah. And you're like, oh, please don't, no more crashes. Like, please, just keep it on the track. But you forget. You really do. You forget how hard Formula E is, and you forget the tracks have got these bumps in them. You forget the walls are just there. You forget that these cars are, especially with the brake-by-wire system, it's much, like, harder to, get it right on the braking. The drivers prefer the brake-by-wire system because it's easier to manage, but it's also it's easier. You're more prone to locking up, which I think maybe we saw with some of the incidents that occurred. And obviously, when you've got street circuits and you've got walls, you're not going to get punished by running off into runoff areas. You're going to hit a wall, which we saw. But the interesting thing about full course yellow, speaking to the drivers after the race, was that because it was cold in Paris. It was like 13, 14 degrees, outside ambient temperature. Track temperature would have been around the same, if not lower. And because they were struggling to get heat into the tyres, and especially when it's raining, the track temperature cools, the tyres cool, and grip goes away. So that was the other sort of thing. And they said that the first full course yellow for the rain, they were running okay, actually. Like, I spoke to Evans, Frijns, Apt. They were running okay. They had temperature in the tyres, but when that first full course yellow, the tyre temperatures dropped. So when it went green, they said that's when it became like driving on ice, while they were trying to get those tyre temperatures up, and that's where we saw the first sort of collisions. Which, if you want, I've talked for a bit, mate. You can explain.
I don't even know where to start.
I think we'll start with Sam Bird and Jerome D'Ambrosio leaving to Roland. This is where Roland decided to lose his front wing once again after changing it. So we had Bird lock up, sort of minor aquaplane sort of lock up. He went wide. He was sort of safe, but he didn't know D'Ambrosio was behind him, who had completely gone in far too quickly. Sort of slammed into him, sent him spinning, and then all of a sudden, just after that, Ollie Rowland comes steaming in again, and then poor old Alexander Sims, minding his own business, just gets smacked and walloped into the wall.
Yeah.
And we all of a sudden it looked worse than it was, but we had basically 2-car incident two separate incidents involving two cars that happened at the same corner at the same time. So it made it look worse than maybe what it actually was.
I'd like to know if anything major happened to Alex Sims's powertrain, because the impact was big, and I mean big. And usually not usually, but potentially this could lead to gearbox damage, floor damage, transmission damage. That's not too... it's related to the gearbox, obviously. If the drive shaft breaks, that's not a problem. But anything could theoretically break with that sort of impact. I'd like to know if anything happened there.
Yeah.
We'll find out in Monaco, probably. Yeah.
Yes. But obviously that incident brought out another full course yellow, so the tyre temperatures drop again. But this time the rain at that point was starting to stop, which was good. So the worst of the weather had gone through at that time. So that was good for the race anyway, and the track was starting to dry. But then we still saw incidents despite the rain stopping.
That's the nature of street circuits, isn't it?
Yep.
We had a lot of white lines, a bit of undulation around Paris as well. That doesn't really come across in the TV pictures, but the area around turns, let me think, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that has a lot of undulation actually. And the same,
yeah, it does.
It's
basically uphill then downhill in terms of the first corner after the start light. So that's turn 2 to turn 3. It all goes up and down.
Yeah, and then the corner right before the attack zone also has a little kink and a small hill, and
it's just enough to unsettle these cars.
Yeah, and then add zebra crossings to that, and different kinds of tarmac. We had the new tarmac, obviously, in the second sector, with the historic cobblestones, and then Formula E always adds a protective layer onto these cobblestones, and then put asphalt on it, fresh asphalt. That has a different grip level compared to usual street asphalt.
Yes.
Manhole covers playing a role there, and especially in the braking zones.
Yeah.
I think at least last year we had 9 different tarmac versions going into turn 3, and that's the nature of street circuits, obviously, but that really made things interesting and difficult at the same time for the drivers.
It's because we had a few, didn't we? But then we had some that weren't really weather related, because obviously we had Massa spinning, that was sort of weather related. It was still slippery back turn 2, where he just lost it by himself. But then we had Turvey hitting Massa, which was sort of weather related as well back at turn 3, where the incident happened with Sims, D'Ambrosio, Bird and Roland. But we had one that brought out the third and final sort of full course yellow sort of like safety car period, when Mortara decided to completely just go into the back of Alex Lynn, trying to go for a move that wasn't on. And poor Alex Lynn, who's trying to finish and trying to just do a race without any incident since joining after Nelson Piquet left, was just clobbered into the wall. And yeah, not much really Alex could have done. How did you see this situation?
Just a silly move. All of that happened in turn 13, so the penultimate corner on the circuit. The left-hander before the long sweeping right-hander before the finish line. That's where it all happened.
Yeah, so it was the final two. So I think that those corner numbers were... So it was the turn 13 sort of chicane, where it goes round part finish line into turn 14 and across the finish line of the 14, because it's a 14. Right. So just before the pit exit, that collision was, but it was just silly from Mortara. The move was never on, and yeah,
never ever was the move on.
Yeah,
I have no idea what he was thinking in that situation.
And he was handed a 3-place grid penalty for Monaco for it. But we'll get on to the other two in a minute, because I think what we should do. But let's just before we move on to the sort of the race result, tires. I felt to be honest with you, I know we talked about them getting cold, but I felt like the all-weather Michelin tires did a fairly decent job in that rain. Like, they were really tested for the first time at full racing speeds, No precautionary stuff in a shakedown session, no reduced power, while running in the wet. So I felt like they did a decent job.
They did, yeah. I mean, I'm sure we've seen it before in race power modes in Adiria, for example, the season opening race. We've had wet practice and qualifying there, where people have been also going around at 200 and 225 and 250 kilowatts. So the power modes available in Formula E. We've seen the Michelin tires work in the wet before, but they've proven to be really reliable in the wet once again. And I agree. They did a great job with the tire, and the first test was passed with no problems whatsoever.
Yeah, because as we said, like for France of us, you can disagree with us if you want. Feel free, but at the same time, I felt like the incidents that we had were probably compounded by street circuits. Like if it was in Monaco, for example, Monaco Formula 1, for example, you could see it. Like if it was heavy rain, we do see drivers crash at the Nouvelle Chicane and to back, and things can happen. It's a street circuit. There's a wall there. If you make a mistake, and it's compounded in the wet in wet running, so I don't think you can blame the tyres too much, and I think they held up pretty well. But moving on then to the race now, Frijns and Lotterer. Despite Frijns having that front wing damage, Frijns and Lotterer really were in a class of their own. But it was Robin Frijns then who was able, as I know we get to this point in the podcast where we reveal the race winner, but we already all know the race winner at the same time, and I sort of did accidentally say Frijns won the race earlier in the podcast, which was like, oh no, but really and truly it doesn't matter. So Frijns, he was able to take his maiden victory on King's Day, which is a big holiday in Holland, and he now with that victory, can you believe it? I don't think anyone going into Paris would have said Robin Frijns would be, no disrespect to Robin, like he's a fantastic race driver, I don't mean that in any like harsh way,
he is.
But I don't think we would have thought Robin Frijns would be coming away from this race leading the Drivers' Championship.
That is right, yeah. And also Andre Lotterer being just 1 point behind him and not having a race win at this stage. I had someone say he might win the championship without winning a single race.
I think Andre's win will come, but he's on that route, isn't he? He's definitely on that route to winning a race to winning a championship, because he's the most consistent driver at the moment. He really is.
Although he had 2 occasions on which he didn't score any points. Santiago, where it was in no man's land, and then had the incident with Felix da Costa and his teammate Jean-Eric Verne, and then Hong Kong, which was a disaster for him. Obviously with the tire cutting incident, and Sam Bird should have won the race, and then the disastrous end to that one.
Yeah.
And now it's only his second podium this year. However, good top 10 and top 5 results beforehand mean he's up to 80 points in the Drivers' Championship now. Frijns has 81 to his name. And, I mean, even after 8 races... after 8 races in this season, anything is still up for grabs.
Yep, 8 races.
Who got third in Paris? The third German, Daniel Abt in P3, taking 15 points away for Audi. His teammate Lucas Di Grassi finishing 4th, taking another 12 points away for Audi. These guys have finally found the pace and are a close match to the Envision Virgin crew finally at this stage. They've been absolutely dominated by their customer team in the previous rounds, and now Audi finally found their pace and is now only trailing their customer team by 6 points in the championship.
Well, driver of the day then. Driver of the day. Now, this is quite a difficult one, to be honest with you, because it was such a crazy race. Tobias, I'm going to open it up to you. I'll take the short straw on trying to think of maybe someone else. But who would you say your driver of the day was?
I'd say my driver of the day is Andre Lotterer. We haven't really talked too much about him today, but he started the race after qualifying in P8. Started the race from P6 because of the 2 penalties for Mahindra. Started the race from P6 and then made the best use of all these weird conditions and people retiring all around him. Plowed through the field and ended up in second, challenging Frijns for the most part of the race. The Virgin still had a bit of a pace advantage, but still Andre could keep up with him, and that once again gives him my award for the driver of the day. How about yours?
Well, I was surprised. I really thought you were going to go for Robin Frijns, but then again, a German going with a German driver, so that makes sense. Right then, so that means I thought you were going to go for Frijns, and then I was probably going to go for Lotterer, but I will go for Frijns then, because I think Frijns did an amazing job. I said, yes, I know he's a little bit debatable about, his move on Buemi and so forth, but to be fair, he and Lotterer both were fantastic. They both mastered the conditions. They didn't really put a foot wrong when it started to rain. While others were tripping up over each other, those two were just consistently just putting in the lap times. So, and for Frijns to win with a dodgy front wing as well, I thought was just even more spectacular. So, for me, definitely Robin for driver of the day, but Lotterer is also a fantastic a shout for driver of the day. But I think Dan Dan should be proud of us. That's what I want to say. I think we've done a decent job. I think we've done him all right, Tobias.
He should be happy. He should be happy. Yeah.
He should be happy with us. We've held the fort down. We've had some interesting debate. And we've done it. So I just want to say thank you so much, Tobias, for coming on again.
Oh no, thank you for having me on and for being here as well.
Always a pleasure. Monaco, I will be in Monaco. Tobias, will you be in Monaco?
I don't have the money to be in Monaco. No, I won't be.
Oh, no. Oh, so I will be in Monaco, so I will be there giving you... So for the next podcast that we do after Monaco, so Dan it's unlikely that Dan will be back, so he's doing his law exams at the moment. Student life and everything, so it might be difficult, so it will be me and Tobias again. If not, we're trying our best to get a guest, but, sometimes, people are busy with lives and sometimes people can't come on. So, if not, it might be someone with another brand new spanking guest to take us through the Monaco E-Prix. But if not, you'll have to listen to the luscious, gorgeous tones of myself and Tobias in our Monaco podcast. But thank you so much for listening. Please remember to subscribe, like the video, follow us on Twitter, and on Patreon, just enjoy the content. Okay, give E-Formel-D. They do some amazing work. I know it's in German, but for our German listeners, and even if you're not German, you can translate. There's this beautiful thing called Google Translate, and it translates their articles. They do some amazing work. Timo, Tobias, the gang over there do some amazing work. So please do give E-Formel-D a like, a follow, and just go check out their page because they're doing some amazing stuff. Okay, right, see you in Monaco.